There was a time when the land of Africa belonged to black people, who were masters of their own will. Their villages were filled with greenery, children played, women sang songs, men hunted, and the color of life sparkled in their eyes. But this peace did not last long. Ships from across the sea arrived, Portuguese, Dutch, British, French, all drowned in greed. They seized the African coasts, fueled tribal wars, and captured those who became weak, chaining them in irons. This was the event of 1619 when, for the first time, about 20 black people were brought to Jamestown, Virginia. They were not slaves but indentured servants, yet the system soon changed. By the 1660s, laws were made that a child of African descent would remain a slave like their mother. In 1662, Virginia passed a law that a child born to an enslaved mother would be born enslaved. In 1667, baptism would not grant freedom. In 1669, a master would face no punishment for killing a slave because they were considered property. These laws were created by white people to keep black people forever beneath them. The journey from Africa to America was a journey of death. In the infamous Middle Passage, millions died. On the ships, people were chained with so little space that they could not even sit. Food was rotten, water filthy, diseases spread. Approximately 12.5 million Africans were taken from Africa, of whom about 10.7 million survived to arrive in the Americas. The rest were buried at sea. White captains laughed and said, "They are animals. Throw their bodies into the ocean." Those who survived were sold in the southern states of America. In 1793, Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin. Cotton production boomed. Southern states expanded cotton fields. The need for slaves increased. By 1860, there were about 4 million slaves in America, most in the southern states. The price of a slave sometimes reached $1,000, which in today's terms amounted to thousands of dollars. There was a woman named Henrietta. She was a slave on a large plantation in South Carolina. Her story is the story of many women. Henrietta's mother told her that in Africa we were free, but now our lives are in the hands of the master. Henrietta had to wake up at 4 in the morning, pick cotton, wash clothes, care for children. If she got tired, the overseer would whip her. One day, out of hunger, she picked a banana. The overseer tied her to a tree and gave her 50 lashes. Blood flowed from her back. She cried, but no help came. The master said, "This is necessary so the others fear." There was no limit to the cruelty inflicted on slaves. Children were separated from mothers and sold. A mother's child would be sold to another state, and she would scream and cry, but chains would drag her away. Sexual abuse of women was common. Masters and overseers would come to enslaved women at night. If a child was born, they too became a slave. This was the breeding system. White women often ignored it, or even participated. Slaves tried to escape. Heroes like Harriet Tubman emerged. She was part of the Underground Railroad. She led more than 70 slaves to freedom. But those who tried to escape were hunted with bloodhounds. If caught, the punishment was worse than death. Nat Turner's rebellion happened in 1831. He killed more than 55 white people. In revenge, thousands of black people were killed. Nat Turner was captured and hanged. After 1831, laws in the southern states became even stricter. Slaves were forbidden to read or write. If a book was found, they were whipped. Even in church, they had to sit separately. White people said the Bible stated that the descendants of Ham would be slaves. It was a lie, but they turned it into religion. In 1861, the Civil War began. In 1863, Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Slaves were freed. But after the war, in 1865, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th and 15th Amendments granted citizenship and voting rights. But Southern white people did not accept any of this. During Reconstruction, black people gained some rights. But in 1877, Northern troops were withdrawn. After that, Jim Crow laws began. These were segregation laws. The principle was separate but equal. In 1896, the Supreme Court upheld it in Plessy v. Ferguson. Under Jim Crow, black people sat at the back in separate buses, separate trains, separate schools. Water fountains had whites-only signs. If a black person sat in a white seat, they were beaten. Interracial marriages were banned. The extreme of cruelty was lynching. From 1882 to 1968, about 4,743 lynchings occurred, of which around 3,446 were of black people. People were hanged without trial, burned, mutilated. The Ku Klux Klan attacked at night, wearing white sheets. They burned homes, killed people. One famous case was that of Emmett Till. In 1955, a 14-year-old boy went to Mississippi. He spoke to a white woman. The woman lied. White men abducted him, beat him, destroyed his face, and threw him into the river. His mother kept the coffin open. The world saw it. This image fueled the movement. In 1955, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus. She was arrested. This sparked the Montgomery bus boycott. Martin Luther King Jr. came to the forefront. The boycott lasted a year. Finally, the Supreme Court ruled that segregated seating was unconstitutional. In 1960, the Greensboro sit-ins began. Students sat at Woolworth's counter demanding service. Police came and beat them, but it spread. Sit-ins happened across the South. In 1963, protests took place in Birmingham. Children were included too. Police attacked with fire hoses and dogs. Images spread worldwide. President Kennedy proposed the Civil Rights Bill. That same year, on August 28, the March on Washington occurred. 250,000 people gathered. Martin Luther King delivered the "I Have a Dream" speech. It was a historic moment. But that year, Medgar Evers was shot. In 1964, Malcolm X was also assassinated. In 1965, the Selma to Montgomery March. On Bloody Sunday, police attacked the marchers. The world trembled seeing it. Finally, the march was completed. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed. But the cruelty did not stop. In 1968, Martin Luther King was shot in Memphis. He was speaking for sanitation workers. Riots spread afterward. In the 1970s and 80s, problems continued. The war on drugs sent more black people to prison. In 1991, Rodney King was beaten by police. The video emerged. Riots occurred in 1992. In 2014, Michael Brown was shot in Ferguson. Black Lives Matter began. In 2020, George Floyd was killed by a knee on his neck. Protests erupted worldwide. This is a long story of oppression. Centuries of pain, chains, whips, lynchings, segregation laws, murders. But black people never lost courage. They kept fighting. They kept raising their voices. The struggle continues today.